All right. Good morning. So we're back at it again, and today I want to talk about the nature of warfare, which has been changing very rapidly over the past few years. But obviously, I mean, it's part of a larger trend overall. But we've been seeing a lot of changes in terms of how all of this stuff is actually playing out. So if you go back to the 80s, the end of the 80s, early 90s, right, end of the Cold War, it kind of followed a fairly linear pattern of development from the end of World War II until then. It's like, planes got faster and tanks got stronger and, boats got bigger and, stuff like that. It was the same platform. They would just improve, right? But nowadays, things are looking pretty chaotic out there still. And, AI plays a role in that may surprise you. We are talking about stuff like AI piloted, aircraft, right? Drones and what have you. We're talking about, AI that's able to do target identification, right? Because it is getting so good at this segmentation process for visuals, right? But it gets further into it, AI can be used for misinformation, because that's just the information war is just as big a part of conflict now as the kinetic aspect of it, right? I mean, obviously, end of the day, it's important not to lose sight that the team that can deliver the most high explosives to the most important critical targets the fastest and in the largest quantity, in so much that they can basically prevent the other team from being able to continue to manufacture the means to wage war, or the ability to communicate, or what have you, right? So that is still ultimately the main sort of the main game that's being played here, is the physical destruction of assets, right? That being said, this concept of like the generations of warfare, right? And so if we're looking at like 5G warfare, a lot of that is informational, right? It takes place on the internet, right? Through social media, through mass media, through cyber attacks, all kinds of stuff. But then, again, we've talked about before how AI can write code now, right? Don't think for a second that doesn't affect, the military, right? Of course it does. If you are working at a defense contractor, for example, right, and your job is to write code for a piece of defense equipment, maybe it was slow adoption because of privacy concerns or, restrictions and stuff like that, but don't think it's not getting adopted. Damn well it is still. And then, of course, you have again, we've talked about the difference between operations and product, right? And you can apply the same concepts into the defense industry, right? So there's the operational benefits of AI, and then there are actually embedded AI in the product. So AI writing code for the software for a missile would be considered like kind of the operational side of things. But then embedding AI inside of the missile would be the product, if that makes sense. So think about that for a second still. Now, if you're familiar with a concept called the kill chain, then you'll understand that AI can be applied to every step in that chain. Well, just about anyway still. Either through an operational perspective or through a product perspective. Still feels weird to use the word product in terms of military stuff, but whatever. So how does this work? What does this look like still, right? So you have new sort of defense contractors coming out. For example, Palantir and Anduril immediately come to mind, right? That are making very obvious sort of use cases for leveraging new technologies in the defense space, right? Palantir focusing a lot on AI for a long time, actually, and the information space, that operation space, like networking, communications, things like that. And then you have Anduril, which has a heavy focus on, again, the delivery of kinetic payloads, right? So it's using drones and cruise missiles and things like that. But then, so if an AI-powered sort of drone cruise missile type of thing is their product, then the manufacturing facilities would be their operation, and that also could benefit from AI, right? Putting AI into roles inside of factories that are building these things, right? So ultimately, this means that the defense industry follows the same curve as the rest of technology, and is therefore the same rules apply when we talk about sort of reaching a technological singularity. They'll also be moving along at the same pace as all the other technology, right? Historically, governments and large contractors like that have been very slow to adopt new things, but it seems like that slowness is changing for very obvious and pragmatic reasons. Hey, oh jeez, come on, give me a second here. All right, there we go. We back? Yes, we're back. Sorry. It's pretty kind of thirsty right now still. I mean, literally just woke up like 15 minutes ago still. So, yeah, we're talking about, okay, so the defense industry is going to follow the same curve as all the other technology industries insofar as the singularity. Governments, specifically their focus on defense adoption, are moving faster. We saw recently the U.S. military either canceled or put up for review like basically every single land system in development for the Army. So there's like tanks, APCs, IFVs, and the sort, right? And there's a very good reason for that still. It's because there's a lot of like imminently obsolete technology that was in the pipeline, right? Or imminently obsolete platforms that were in the pipeline because they didn't have the tech built into it that's required in order to survive on a modern battlefield, right? And I'd say pretty soon it's gonna be real fucking difficult for humans to survive on a modern battlefield. And it's just gonna get to the point where it's either robots versus humans or robots versus robots. Now, let's say we get to the point where it's robots versus robots. And personally, I actually think this is a good thing still. If less people die, that's great on all sides, right? I don't much care for, the bloodbaths and all of those things, right? I mean, I've always thought that it would be cool if we could settle conflicts with, a game of hockey or something, right? But apparently we're not quite there yet. So we'll have to stick with, battle bots or whatever. So anyways, let's say we get to this point where it's robot versus robot, right? And it's just the same thing, but on a different platform as we had before, right? I mean, and you can go back to the beginning of warfare. It's like which team had like the stronger guys, the faster guys, the better, sharper sticks, the more reliable arrows, stuff like that, and so on and so forth. And it's always been, this combination of things, right? And it's no different with robots, right? The robots that are the fastest, smartest, strongest, best organized, best supplied, and coming in the, the best quantity, making the most intelligent decisions, they're going to win, right? And the margin for error will really depend on the gap in technology between the two teams, right? So let's say you got red team, blue team, right? So let's say red team has a billion drones, okay? And you know, the ammo to go with it, the fuel to go with it, and they have like a pretty decent sort of like comms network and logistics, supply chain and all of that, right? And it's all right. And let's say the other team, so blue team has, red team's got 1 billion and then blue team's got 1 million. So blue team's outnumbered 1,000 to 1 in this scenario, right? Now, blue team could still win. If blue team has 1 million drones that are like 100 times or even 10 times like stronger, faster, let's say they have a significantly more resilient communications network. Let's say they have all of those 1 million drones have autonomous capabilities, you know, are able to make their own decisions independent of being connected to a network, which is subject to electronic warfare sort of disruption and things like that. There's an old saying that quantity is its own thing, right? Like, it's its own quality. Quantity is a quality in and of itself, I think, is how it went. That's a little early to be quoting Stalin, I think, but fuck it. And that is true. Of course, that's true. Still, you can have overwhelming sort of, things like that, right? But if you have your 1 million drones go up to the other 1 billion drones, and they're so good that those like mediocre 1 billion drones just like can't even score a kill on the high quality 1 million drones, well, you just given us 1 billion drones for target practice. Thank you. Let's have fun with it. There's also an economic aspect of it as well too. Now, this is actually really apparent in the air defense space. So when we're looking at surface-to-air missiles, when there is an asymmetric economic disparity in engagements, right? So, for example, let's say red team is firing many small, cheap rockets, right? And then blue team is using very expensive rockets to shoot those down. Blue team has to spend significantly more money just to defend itself, right? Let alone, go on any kind of offensive, right? Now, on the flip side of that, what can happen is a development in technology can also change that economic perspective as well, too. So if blue team can adopt a platform where the munitions required to engage are significantly cheaper, then that nullifies that economic advantage. So an example of this would be a system like the Phalanx, which uses bullets to shoot down missiles, or like a laser weapon system, right? Direct energy weapon systems, which only costs a few bucks worth of electricity, to score a kill, right? And that all of a sudden that negates that that advantage that the red team had, where they could attempt to bleed the other team dry economically as a path to victory, right? Because in many cases, it's not necessarily just the outcomes on the battlefield that determine, success and failure. It's like I said, it's the whole thing, right? There is the economic aspect of it. There is the production aspect of it. There's the supply chain logistics aspect of it, which is very crucial. In fact, there's another old saying that says, amateurs talk strategy, professionals talk logistics, right? And that's really never been more true, than today still. Now, there are obvious benefits with the AI, right? So with the, these autonomous sort of like not need to feed them. Not not in the traditional sense. You don't need to like, cook food and give them showers and, beds to rest anymore, right? You just got to feed them, whatever their fuel source is, if that's like, electricity to charge their batteries or diesel or whatever, right? And then obviously whatever ammunition that they need, whether that's traditional kinetic munitions or like energy munitions or electricity to power their energy weapon systems, things like that. And this may sound sci-fi, but it's literally already happening still. I mean, U.S. Department of Naval Research has been testing out laser weapon systems for at least 12 years ago that I can remember. And I think we've seen them in action in Israel and in Ukraine already. So listen, I could go on and on about this, but we're going to save some more for another day. So we'll see you in the next one.